Good evening, y'all. Hope you're doing well. This evening, I'd like to talk about our final research paper that I've been working on entitled Baptists in the American Revolution, Baptists in the South and Their Role in the War of Independence. The purpose of writing this paper is to examine the role that Baptists played in the American Revolution in the states of North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. And to understand this situation, we need to understand there were two predominant groups of Baptists in this area at the time. You have the regular Baptists who are also called particular Baptists, who tended to be in the coastal low country areas, and they trace their heritage back to the First Baptist Church of Charleston, South Carolina, and the Philadelphia Baptist Association. This group, like I said, was in the low country area and was one group of Baptists, whereas in the back country, in the Piedmont area, you had another group of Baptists called the Separate Baptist, and they started showing up on the scene in the 1750s with the establishment of Sandy Creek Baptist Church in Sandy Creek, North Carolina, and were very aggressive in their evangelism and spread across the South very quick within a 20 years time. And so by 1775, these are your two main groups of Baptists in the area. Also, to add to this complexity, and may I add also that these two groups were not the best at getting along. There was oftentimes they snubbed one another, and on isolated occasions they did work together, but that was very few of those occasions. So we're dealing with a group that's two groups of Baptists who don't want to work together, who tend to hold a slight prejudice towards one another, and then you add to this the regional tensions between the low country planter class and the backcountry settlers. The backcountry settlers felt like they did not have representation in the colonial governments. They did not get adequate justice and law and regulation in the backcountry. And so really, they felt more animosity and tension towards the low country elites than they did towards the king himself and towards Parliament. And so this proves in 1775 to be a tricky situation, and the state governments realize they've got a problem on their hands. They're working for independence, and they're looking at fighting a war with Britain, but they're dealing with a backcountry that predominantly does not support them. And so to combat this, the South Carolina state government puts together a delegation made up of Oliver Hart, pastor of First Baptist Church of Charleston, who was an adamant supporter of the Revolution, a supporter of independence, and grant you, he was in the Low Country. He was a regular Baptist, and so the regular Baptists tended to support the Revolution. They tend to be in the Low Country, tend to support independence and the Revolution, but the back country was the problem, and so this delegation is put together along with William Tennant III, a Presbyterian minister who was pastoring Independent Church of Charleston, and also a lawyer, and they go into the backcountry to convert the backcountry inhabitants to the Patriot cause. And they get mixed results. Some are successful, but then some run into problems. Walter Edgar, in his book Partisans and Redcoats, records that when they showed up at Philip Mulkey's church, who was a separate Baptist pastor, he stood hard against them. He denounced the Patriot cause. He would not support the Revolution, would not support independence, and worked to persuade his people not to support it as well. Also, up in North Carolina, resistance was met, as recorded in Baptist in America by Thomas Kidd and Mary Hankins, by a separate Baptist minister named James Miles, who said this: "Show him a great man with a half moon in his hat, with liberty written upon it, and his hat full of feathers, and he would show you a devil, and that poor men were bowing and scraping to them, and the patriots leading them to hell as soon as they had come from the Congress." There's some strong words, and this was the word of James Miles, a separate Baptist preacher in North Carolina. And so the separate Baptists in the backcountry tended that it was a hard job to convert them to the Patriot cause, but there was not all of them were like this. A young man by the name of Richard Furman, a separate Baptist pastor, pastoring the church at the high hills of Santee, became a vehement supporter of independence. He worked hard to win the backcountry Baptists over to the war effort, and was successful in a lot of his endeavors. And he was so successful that James Rogers records in his biography of Richard Furman that Cornwallis put a price of 1,000 pounds on Furman's head. When Cornwallis is trying to clamp down on South Carolina, and during the 1780 and 1781, He is trying to get a handle on the things in South Carolina. He puts a price of 1,000 pounds on Richard Sherman's head. And it's said that he made the statement that he feared the prayers of Richard Sherman more than he feared the armies of Francis Marion and Thomas Sumter, key military leaders in South Carolina at the time. And so Richard Sherman proves to be extremely influential in this. But one of the unique things you see throughout the progress of the war is that these two groups of regular Baptists and separate Baptists who typically could not get along and could not work together on things, find a sense of unity during the war. They begin to come together and begin to work together on things that beforehand they would not have done. And so you see the war has a unifying effect on the Baptists of the Carolinas and Georgia. And this leads into the post-war efforts to make a unified Baptist association or convention across the states, which will result in the creation of the Triennial Baptist Convention, or Baptist Fellowship, I believe it is, which Richard Sherman will be influential in. Also in my research, I found the work that Baptists did in setting up state governments and in lobbying for religious freedom. And in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia, the Baptists played an extremely influential role in working to get the Anglican Church disestablished from these colonies and to have enshrined religious freedom, that they could get freedom from persecution, which the Baptists had been persecuted rather severely in certain colonies. And so this is the research that I have. I apologize for going over time a little bit. But I've enjoyed doing this research and have learned a lot. Have a good evening.